I think that's pretty good. And then we can go help too, then we can.
Never heard the recording in progress and quiet, huh? Surprise. We're gonna give it 1 or like 30 seconds here and we'll get started. If you are looking for session B1, mapping the way to partnership projects, you're in the right place. So welcome. That was the first test of the day. So great work. All right. I have the honor to introduce our 2 speakers today. Our first speaker is Alexandra Neumann, who works on the agriculture team at the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, which develops partnerships with farmers and food system corporations across the watershed. These partnerships collaborate to implement projects on farms that improve water quality and mitigate climate change. Alexandra holds a BS in sustainability and a BS in conservation biology from Barrett, the Honors College at Arizona State University. With prior experience in grant writing, participatory research with rural farmers, and the urban ag education in a K-5 setting, her academic and professional work has centered on building sustainable food systems. Alexandra lives in Lancaster, PA, where she's often found hiking, gardening, and volunteering in the community. Ryan Hill is our second speaker today. Ryan is a project coordinator / geospatial analyst for the Chesapeake Conservancy, supporting collaborative restoration projects in Pennsylvania under the 30 by 30 initiative. He serves under the programs team and the CIC to develop, advance, and implement mapping tools that support partnerships focused on precision conservation. Most recently, he worked as a senior environmental planner for Monroe County to administer the agricultural preservation program and water quality monitoring program. He graduated from Penn State with a bachelor's degree in environmental resource management with minors in GIS and watershed and water resources. So I'll turn it over.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming. We're really excited about sharing this project with you. So before we do that.
Oh, just hit the Zoom screen.
We'll talk a little bit about our organizations. So I'm with the Chesapeake Conservancy. We are a nonprofit organization out of Annapolis, Maryland, with offices in Pennsylvania. Our mission is advancing strong public and private partnerships, developing and using new technologies, and empowering environmental stewardship throughout the Bay watershed. Within the Chesapeake Conservancy, there's a Conservation Innovation Center, or the CIC. They produce Bay-wide publicly accessible high-resolution data, as well as tools like we'll look at today to support data-driven conservation. Also under the Chesapeake Conservancy, there's the Chesapeake Tributaries Initiative. This is a community-driven approach supporting partnerships, much like this one, to reach near-term conservation goals for local creeks and streams.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Kate. So a bit about the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, which you're, I'm sure, learning more about if you haven't already. But for those of you who are new to us, the Alliance's mission is to bring together communities, companies, and conservationists to improve the lands and waters of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We have offices across the watershed. And for program areas, I work under the agriculture program, as Kate mentioned. So some of the projects that we implement, just for some context, to talk about what projects are we talking about for mapping today. Really, we're focusing on how mapping can assist our agriculture program. So I work with farmers to help install riparian forest buffers, soil conservation practices like this grass waterway, barnyard improvement areas to prevent runoff and leaching of nutrients into groundwater, manure storage facilities, also in that picture on the right. And so to get these practices installed, we not only work with farmers to do education and outreach, but we also apply for grants to get those funded. We develop partnerships with local agencies and with companies. And with those companies, we are able to improve our outreach and also our funding towards these projects. So just getting a little more into detail on the core partnerships that are important to the Alliance's agriculture program. These are our partnerships with private industry. So we developed a nonprofit agricultural industry model that we have expanded over the past 6 or 7 years, maybe. I'm losing track how many years it is, but we started this flagship model with our partnership with Turkey Hill Dairy and Maryland and Virginia Milk Producers Co-op, where we do outreach with co-op staff to the farmers that they're already well established with good relationships. We're able to provide education and technical assistance for the BMPs that I mentioned, also connect the farmers to engineering groups, or again, those agencies, government agencies that would provide engineering services. And so in that way, we're able to work with companies in the supply chain to improve the conservation outcomes of farms that supply to them. From our flagship partnership, we have expanded to having 5 or more that I don't know about that are in the works. Partners in dairy and poultry industries, which is fantastic. We're able to reach hundreds of farmers in this way through the partnerships with the co-ops. We've implemented over 300 NRCS conservation practices and expanded from our original starting location in Pennsylvania into Maryland and Virginia in 2021, and this year into New York, which is very exciting. So all of this growth is due to a variety of factors. Really, it's important to think about those interpersonal skills and partnership development skills and tips that were highlighted in the plenary this morning and are going to be a focus of so many of the sessions during this conference. Those collaboration and negotiation skills, collaboration, project management, all of these soft skills, I suppose, are really, really crucial to getting projects moving forward. In this presentation, though, we're going to take a little bit of an alternative approach and talk about a technical tool that helps with project management, which is mapping. So mapping is one of the many tools in our tool belt to help us to really accelerate our work, to keep everything organized and make sure that we are following through with each of the farmers that we work with. So thinking about mapping as a tool to improve partnerships, the first benefit that I'll talk about is prioritization. So deciding where and when to do outreach, or what kinds of practices to implement, where to implement those practices, who's involved. There's so many factors that you have to decide when pursuing a new project, and it can be challenging to make those decisions because of the number of criteria and the number of partners that you're working with. They all have different but complementary goals. So determining a prioritization method, figuring out what's important to each of the partners, making compromises, expanding on what your original goal set was, and then saying, this is our method of identifying new projects. That can be represented visually on a map, so that moving forward, you're able to streamline decision-making, refer back to what you decided on previously, and know that all the partners are in agreement with how you're going to move forward with project selection. A second benefit is project management. So for existing projects, ones that are in progress, there's a lot of information you may have to keep track of, and a map is a great way of distilling that large data set into a couple of major points that you want to have access to regularly, in a visual way, especially. So if there's things that you would like to see associated with your farm project or a green infrastructure project, whatever you're working on, that can be added into a mapping system so you can keep track of it visually. The map can also, if you set it up in this way, it can be shared among partners. So perhaps there's an internal spreadsheet to your organization, keep track of a lot of data, but you want to share 3 data points in the partnership. The map is a good place to do that. And then this last category of things, enhancing the partner experience, I talked about streamlined decision-making. That really ties back to the prioritization discussion. the map is just a way to represent the decision of how you're prioritizing projects. Transparency, again, having a platform to share this information among partners is helpful. Efficiently using funding. This also ties back to your priorities. So once it's well known what kinds of projects you're going to be pursuing and you pursue those, you're able to use your funding and time in a way that is most relevant to your goals. Grant reporting and applications. This is a big one for my team. Being able to see easily the project management information and just take screenshots of maps for grant reports is very nice. We don't have to make a new map every single time we have a grant report or an application. And then communications. Use those same snips of maps for blog posts, for sharing with partners who are interested in seeing the geography of where you're working. So there's a whole lot of benefits that you can think about if you're interested in creating a map for your project management. So I have just a question to get some thoughts going here with you all. So thinking about an existing partnership that you have, what questions about project management and new site selection do you wish you could answer better? And I'm asking this because a map can sometimes be a way to answer those questions. So I'm curious if there are challenges to project management or choosing new projects that you all might have, and we can see if they'll tie into mapping. Yes.
So if I was going to be working with some farm in particular, or had an opportunity to do that, I think I'd want to know what the landscape context was, you know, which that farm sits, and whether we want to be working with not just that farm, but adjacent farms, et cetera. And to me, it seems like mapping tools can help you more quickly figure out what that context is on the ground, to help you figure out whether or not you do, in fact, want to do a project on that particular property.
Yeah, those are great points. The landscape context, what is needed on that farm and needed by neighbors, perhaps. Other suggestions, questions? Yeah.
Site maintenance for conservation landscaping projects.
That would be interesting. I bet that would need a lot of updated aerial imagery. I'm not sure how fast it's updated, but that's
Or even like a user experience where a volunteer could, like, you know, click on a site on a map and, you know, say that they maintained it on that day, and then that would be added to the data.
Yeah, that's a good project management idea. I find that having visual tools like this is really helpful to just simplify the kind of data you're working with. So for volunteers especially, being able to see, yes, I worked on this site, adding in a report. Yeah, good ideas. Yes.
It'd be really helpful to be able to see the total area of land around like a ground soil turn project that flows into that project.
Yeah, very small scale watersheds, catchments. Yeah.
Being able to use it in our phones, that would be super important.
Yeah, taking the map with you into the field to be able to either show to landowners or farmers or just reference yourself. Great. Oh, yes.
Just a question before I answer. Do the maps include the people and persons of the community as well, or is it just because I would want to know about the demographic of those that live there and the makeup? Is that fair?
Yeah, those kinds of layers definitely exist. We'll get into that too. Yes.
What about the topography or map and terrain? Could that?
Yeah, contour lines on maps. I don't think we don't have that on our map, but yeah, I think
because
my team suggests that
based on if we're doing agriculture based on based on GIS and doing GIS based on agriculture, wouldn't it be possible? Shouldn't it be necessary that we have a topography or how about soil terrain or how about soil moisture?
Yeah, there are soil map layers through the NRCS. I think they also have contour maps as well. I'm interested in getting them on our map too. Having all the data in one place is very helpful. So you'll probably notice through this presentation, it's a lot of simple things. Having all the simple information all together makes a difference. Anything else before we keep going? These are all great suggestions and good pieces of information to add to a map. All right. So some of the things that you said will factor into the slide as well. So when you're first making a map, the first step is to think about what you want to know about project locations, which is what we just discussed. What are your priorities, which will assist you with site selection, and what are the project specs that you keep track of for existing project management? Some other examples of priorities I listed here. So let's see, from what you all said, I think our early comment about the landscape context and if there's an opportunity for conservation projects, within adjacent properties, that could fit under what I was thinking in terms of need for conservation, looking at aerial photography and additional GIS analysis on top of that can show where those BMP needs are. Underserved communities that might relate to questions people have about demographics. What kind of communities exist in the area that you might be doing the project? Or from the other perspective, you want to work with underserved communities that your partner engages with. Where are they located? Some other ones, grant funding geographies. This is important for the Alliance since we're always applying for funding for our farmers projects. It's really important for us to know what they're eligible for. And then watersheds, that was brought up. It can be at a very small scale of, what is draining into your potential restoration area, up to a larger scale of, a sub-watershed within the Chesapeake Bay. Some other spec examples here. Not sure those were brought up just now in our discussion, but if you wanted to represent existing projects on a map, you could indicate, your lead partner, the project status. Is it an initial outreach that's happened? Is it, after the project's completed, do you have everything you need? And then any relevant dates, that could be a helpful thing to include as well. If there's a due date for a grant that you're applying to associated with that location, it's a good place to keep track of that. Okay, so as an intro to the Lancaster prioritization tool, which is the case study that we'll be talking about here today for mapping. After the Chesapeake Conservancy and the Alliance talked about our priorities and our specs that we wanted to represent on the map, we started developing the map itself. So overall, this tool is meant to be a map for the entire Alliance agriculture program. It's still a work in progress. Right now, most of its data is about Pennsylvania. Again, just to reiterate, its first purpose is to track current project specs. So this is just a zoomed out screenshot of the Chesapeake Bay watershed with our project locations. And then the second, I will note, we do have our internal spreadsheet of data connected to this map. So it's, as soon as we update our internal tracking system, it is displayed on the map, which is a great feature of ArcGIS. And then the second main priority, or purpose rather, of this map is to show priorities for site selection. Since a lot of our work in Pennsylvania concentrates in Lancaster County right now, we started with the prioritization method for Lancaster County. Our question being, where is there a need for conservation? Really the comment that we had here in our discussion. Where do BMPs exist? Where do they not exist? So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to discuss that methodology.
Thank you. So talking about priorities for site selection, when we're developing this methodology, we kind of have three goals in mind. The first, as Alexandra mentioned, we want to identify and prioritize areas that pose the greatest impact as far as nutrient and sediment loading into the stream. Next, we wanted to present those opportunities to implement best management practices to improve that water quality. And then lastly, we wanted to express that data and all that information down into one number so it's easy to use and easily digestible. So as we work through the methodology, we're going to use this parcel as the example. If we look closely from aerial, we can see it's an ag parcel. We know that. If we zoom in a little bit more on the stream section, you can see that it's not well vegetated. So this will serve as our example as we work through the methodology. Now, starting off and working with partners on the ground, we know that restoration is done farm by farm. From a geospatial scale, we wanted to work on the parcel scale to do this. Out of 188,000 parcels in Lancaster County, we did have to filter that list down a bit. So we had to filter out anything like small residential lots, developed areas, roads, railroads, anything like that, that we couldn't call an ag parcel. Once we filtered that list down, we were able to get our final candidates for this methodology as 7,581 parcels. Now, the first step was to bring in high-resolution land use land cover data produced by the Conservation Innovation Center. As our example parcel is showing up here, we see a lot of orange. If we look at the classification list on the right, should be a laser somewhere. Nope. If we look at the classification list on the right, orange represents cropland. There's a little bit lighter yellow color. That's either pasture or turf grass. So we definitely wanted to characterize the parcel itself. I appreciate you saying as at the landscape scale, we want to be able to characterize it. So we do that using this data, and then we can also characterize the landscape around that parcel. So really what we're doing is we're combining all these sources for nutrient and sediment runoff, and we're calling it, adding everything together between agriculture, impervious, and turf. And we're calling that AIT, and we'll see that acronym a few times with this methodology. Additionally, we're using enhanced flow paths also produced by the CIC. This gives us a little bit better resolution on the stream, and it also includes width, which is important for the next step. So now that we've characterized the parcel, we've characterized the landscape, we want to look near the stream. So we look on 35 feet on either side of the stream. And again, using that land use land cover data, we're able to characterize that area immediately around the stream. And what we're doing is we're looking for any unvegetated area on the stream. So when we looked at this in aerial, we could see that it was unvegetated. Now we're able to characterize that alone. Also, using the land use land cover data, we're able to identify barnyard clusters, pull out the structures from that data. For this exercise, it worked 3 buildings within a certain perimeter, kind of worked as what we were seeing as a barnyard cluster and classifying it as such. 2 of you did mention draining into the stream or seeing what's moving across the landscape. I appreciate that as well. Using the Watershed tool and ArcPro, we were able to delineate drainage areas from each of the vegetated buffer opportunity areas. So this uses the surrounding topography and characterizes how the water is flowing over the landscape into that stream section. So if we look closely, I'd like to point out drainage area 5 here. We can see on the western edge of drainage area 5, we have a lot of developed area that's included in that drainage area. If we follow the southern border, we can see some forested areas as we get nearer to the stream. So what's really important to understand here is that this isn't just the parcel alone. It's the landscape surrounding the parcel, encompassing all the neighboring parcels draining into these stream sections. So that's definitely what we wanted to capture as we're prioritizing these farms. So now that we have all this analysis done, we're able to put the attributes to the parcel, and then we're able to move to our ultimate scoring, getting that down to that one number that I mentioned. Starting on the left, the barnyard score, this is where we're using that barnyard cluster that I mentioned earlier. We're looking at how far is it away from the stream. We're looking at, is it in a drainage area that we can identify? Moving to the right, the landscape score, this is where we're looking at the parcel, anything within those parcel boundaries. We're trying to characterize what's going on that parcel itself. Moving to the far right, we have the buffer score. Now this is taking into consideration all of that drainage coming off into that stream section and any of the buffer information that we had talked about. So if we add all these scores together, we end up with one total impact score. There's a lot of methodology, and we'll take a look at two parcels, one higher ranking one, one lower ranking one, try to make sense of these scores based on these two farms. So if we look at the parcel on the right, again, over arrow, we can see that it's likely an ag parcel. But if we add in all of the data that we had talked about, in the middle of the parcel, we can identify the barnyard cluster easily. I'll try and point that out right in the center in pink. Since it's in a drainage area, we can see that's relatively close to that vegetated buffer opportunity area. It's going to get a fairly high barnyard score. If we take into consideration just the parcel and its landscape, we know it's an ag parcel. We have a lot of drainage coming through the parcel, on the parcel itself, going into different stream sections. It's going to get a fairly high landscape score. As far as the buffer score goes, we can see the headwaters just start at the north of the parcel, where it's pointing at vegetated buffer opportunity area. That drainage area, I think, is over 100 acres of drainage coming off from its neighboring parcels. It's also going to get a fairly high buffer score. Now, this farm itself scored over 1,000 points, but conversely, let's take a look at a lower ranking farm. Thank you. The parcel boundary is delineated with that red thick line that's going around in a sort of triangle. We can see here there's no barnyard cluster, so it's not going to get a barnyard score. That won't be applicable. The landscape score itself, we notice there's not a ton of drainage coming off of this into any vegetated buffer opportunity in that area. So the landscape itself isn't going to score very high. Lastly, there's no vegetated buffer opportunity area noted here, so it's not going to achieve a buffer score either, giving us a total score of 4. So before we jump into the tool and kind of walk through what we have in there, take a quick break. If you want to take out your cell phone, you can scan that QR code. I always call it a QC code. A QR code, or the link is available here. And anybody joining us streaming, it should be available in chat now. What we'd like you to do is answer the question, where is your geography? So if you could draw a circle or a polygon around the area where your organization works. And then secondly, if you could add a text description about what your organization services are. We'll give you about a minute. I should note the text function is a little funky on cell phones, so if you're having any issues, you can skip that one. And we'll give you about a minute to do that.
You control scroll. You hold control and scroll out. No.
Thank you for everyone's input. We knew this was going to be a little chaotic, but it worked all right. You got it. You want it. What's that? Oh, yeah. So what we're seeing here is a lot of overlap between organizations. The Bay is a big area, but we have a lot of organizations working here. And this goes, it's sort of the same as we're seeing in Lancaster County specifically. There's a ton of organizations doing on the ground work. There's a ton of overlap between on the ground partners. And it does tend to look kind of chaotic like this. So what we found was a need to create tools and create things that everybody working on the ground could use, collaborate with, and work together.
Yeah, I'll add to this. I guess it would fall under specs, like a project spec of who might you reach out to, or who are you working with on a current project. And if you don't have a partner identified for a certain need, for example, you're working on a project that needs buffer installation, but your organization doesn't physically install the buffer, having a map layer showing where those service providers are located is helpful, so that if you have a project in this purple area, you know who to contact. And that can be for really any other partner that has a geographic boundary. It's a good reference layer on that. Yeah. Second point here, without ArcGIS, our maps may look like this, which is not all that great for project management. You can sort of extrapolate this to a lot of other data issues in our conservation field, but it's a lot. It can get messy, and it's important to have it all in one place, yes, but also to have it in one nice way.
Sure. Just so that I understand, so all of the analysis portion, is that all automated?
No, so the analysis was done by me through
so
our
each
pro.
of those the color-coded areas with the land use and everything, that's all, so that all requires an individual to sit and process them.
Okay, I see what you mean. Those were all from the Watershed tool in ArcPro. So I'll just jump into it a little bit. Each of the non-continuous pieces of that vegetated buffer opportunity area serves as its own pour point. And then it builds a small watershed based on that restoration opportunity area. So it's just one tool click, and then I think it was like a couple hours later it ran. So yeah, it does take a little bit, but it really does let us get a better idea of what's happening with the water across the landscape onto that one parcel. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay, so now we're getting into designing the tool. And again, we had 3 goals with this as well. As we saw, it can get messy. There's a lot of overlap with different shapes there. So we wanted a collaborative place to find projects and plan strategies so that partners could come into this one place and do all this with each other. We wanted a place where they could record information and keep data. And then we wanted to make sure that it was easy to use and had a simple design. That way, if somebody's maybe not too familiar with online Esri tools, this could be a place they could come in, do what they need to do to get out and put down some restoration practices.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Now we have the context for how the map works and what our design goals were. And also thank you for the question of how it was made. Even though I said it's simple information, it takes a lot of work to organize it and to do that prioritization. So thank you for all of that work that serves us now as we continue to work with farms. So at this point, I would like to show you practically what we use the map for on a daily or weekly basis. I'll also show some of the layers in addition to the prioritization layer and how we use those. And then we'll talk about the questions that the map helps to answer. Okay. So, did you want to talk about the
yeah, I can
overview?
kind of quickly go over the overview. So as I mentioned, we did turn on some layers for this presentation, but what we want to do, like I said, is make it easy and simple to use. So when you come in, there's not a ton going on. It's not very overwhelming. We have a few tools up at the top left, a search bar. There's the legend for quick map making or reference. There's a measurement tool. It's incredibly important for people going on the ground to be able to do that before they go out. We designed a filter tool. So rather than the user having to build any expressions themselves, they could come in here and toggle on and off important information that they need to do their jobs. There's a base map gallery to address the contours. There is a topography layer on here, but it's not refined contours or anything like that. So I appreciate your input before. There's also an editing tool, which we'll get into in a little bit in more detail. And then simply at the top right, we have all of our layers here. Now, do you want me to talk about the two editable ones? Okay. So as far as the design goes, I'm just going to point out two of the layer lists that I kind of worked through. The first being this farm and forest project by Co-op on the top right. So Alexandra had mentioned that they had everything internally on Google Sheets. So what we were able to do is bring that into Arc Online. The really cool thing about this is that it communicates with each other. So any edits made here are done on the Google Sheets and vice versa. And this really allows for a lot of transparency between the partners to be able to communicate to each other through that. There's also an editable comments layer, so users can come in and leave comments for each other, point out interesting locations of interest. And then I'll drop down really quick. The Lancaster prioritization layers are the second to last one here. All of those prioritized parcels are available with all of the data that we had talked about earlier with the methodology. Additionally, we included all of the data that we use to make those determinations. So that way, if someone has a question about why a farm is ranked a certain way, that's all available. We just want to be transparent with the analysis and give them everything they need to make the right decisions and plan accordingly.
Great. All right, so I'll go through some of these. Oh, I see there's some questions before we move forward. Yes.
Can I ask a question, or do you want?
Yeah.
To
no, please.
So, and I may have missed. I'm sorry, but when you identify an area that could be a buffer area for restoration, does your tools also calculate the nutrient and other reduction benefits that would accrue from that?
No, I really want to, but I haven't been able to do that yet.
That would actually be a next phase of this project. The Alliance, because we use so many NIFWIF grants, we use Field Doc to calculate the reductions associated with our projects. It is a requirement of our grant reporting. And our goal for the next phase of this project is to connect the map with Field Doc so that we can see within this project management tool what the reductions would be or what we did achieve. So it is possible to put Field Doc and ArcGIS together.
We're getting there. We're close. Okay. Thank you.
Just real quick, have you noticed any data integrity issues using a Google Sheet as kind of like your database layer for all of the raw data that you get into this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
It's yeah, it's a work in progress to better understand how to just make sure the data is clean. There is at least one step to prevent a complete breakdown of the system. You do have to manually ask ArcGIS to update its source data. And so whenever there's major updates to the spreadsheet, I do that. But because of that, that button, it prevents any issues where, you know, if the Google Sheet were to break down with some internal equation issues, that wouldn't just make the whole map obsolete. So, but yes, there are other issues with it. I'm sure you can use Excel or other data storage methods. Yeah, thanks for that question. Okay, so I'm going to go through the layers and the questions that they help us answer. So with the layers that are on currently, actually, the all farmers layer, which is the layer of orange points, that's where existing projects are that are either completed or in progress. And then the prioritization layer, which you can maybe see. So if you zoom in a little bit, you can tell there's the red to green system of the prioritization. There's 5 different buckets for the prioritization, going from red, orange, yellow, and green. So both of those layers together helps us to answer where BMPs currently exist at a large spatial scale. So we can see, you know, where we're currently working. We can see where we're not working and where there's a need, you know, where there's a lot of the red parcels and there's not a whole lot of projects. So at this scale in the map, it just gives a good overview of where potential future work could be located, and also for grant applications, you know, justifying if we were able to find projects that are willing to move forward in these areas, we can have a narrative to justify why we're moving forward with those projects. I'll also mention the, well, yeah, thanks for bringing up the slides. So within the all farmers layer, as well as the all forest buffer plantings layer, those are both point layers. Whenever we click on one of these points, we get a pop-up box, and this was designed through our partnership of what data we want to display. So this gives a visual of what we were talking about before. What project specs do you care about? These are some main ones that we wanted to appear in the map. So the farmer's name and address, what co-op they're a part of. That's really important when we're having meetings with our co-op partners to be able to use that filter option and just refer to the farms that are within that co-op. We have the project progress, which is helpful for reporting either with the co-op during meetings or for reports for grants. Additional address information, TSP. So again, who we're working with for engineering design or other conservation planning needs. And then we have some information about that particular farm's funding and their needs. For the forest buffers, we have number of trees, acres, address, what the land type is, and the landowner site. Yes, so the land type being what it was converted from. Was it grassland? Was it pasture, cropland? And then landowner site being, was it residential? Was it a farm? We also have planting date in there. So yeah, this is just to give you an idea of what you could potentially put in ArcGIS, what could be in the pop-up box. The next question that we can answer is where do grant funders prioritize or require projects to be located? This is a question either when you're applying for a grant or when you already have a grant and need to figure out whether a farm is eligible for that funding. So Ryan is putting in an address of one of the farms that's an option for us to work with at this point. And using the funding geographies bucket of layers there. Just that first one is a grant that the Alliance has for our buffer voucher program in a couple of counties in central PA, well, south central. So by typing in this address and then toggling through that layer, we can see that they're in this geography. The background is changing color there. So before a site visit, I know, okay, well, I can talk to this farmer that they're eligible for the buffer voucher for that particular grant, which is great. And I would do that for all of the funding layers to make sure that I know what I can offer for funding the projects they're interested in. Okay, next question here. What technical and financial resources are available in this potential project location? So in addition to what funding, I also might want to know what township this farm is in and what county, because I'm probably going to have to know, or at least someone's going to have to know in this project what the township permitting requirements might be for an agricultural project. And then knowing the county, also basic information, but helps me to know who to connect with at the NRCS or the Conservation District. All right, and then zooming in a little bit, I use a more detailed level of resolution when preparing for a site visit. So at this level, we can see the prioritization layer again. So this is helpful to know what the prioritization status is of a particular parcel. So if this is a potential project, I know it's, I think this is a 3. This looks like a yellow. And then also importantly, I can see what adjacent properties are looking like. There's some red there. It's mostly an intermediate level of priority. So that is helpful to know. If we do end up moving forward with this farm for other reasons besides this prioritization layer, I do like to use the reference layers that were used for the prioritization analysis. So the layers that Ryan covered related to the buffer opportunity area. So we'll zoom into a farm here. Maybe are the reference layers loaded? Okay.
You take there's a lot of data, so they take a second.
Yeah. There we go. So I like to look at these reference layers to know what BMPs might be needed at this farm. It's so both this little headwaters and that one up top are on the same property. This is a great example because that stream is not going to be visible from the headquarters. And if I just ask the farmer if they have a stream on their property, they might say no. But I know they have a stream on their property. So instead I just ask, what's your land use around your stream? How do you use that area? And it doesn't have to be a big deal. So I really like knowing what I'm getting into in advance. What else? We have the barnyard cluster layer. So this I like to look at to see what heavy use area protection might already exist. It looks like there's already a concrete barnyard here, which is great. However, I do see this brown area. It's a little hard to see with the lighting in here, but there's like this brown triangle here, which is also evidence of a heavy use area. That's not concrete and not pasture. So we would want to talk about this. I did visit this farm a couple weeks ago, and we talked about that he likes to have outdoor space for his herd when he's transferring them between indoor spaces and the pasture, which he uses his concrete barnyard for just fine. This is just sort of an extension of it that he never thought about managing better. But we talked about, getting pasture value out of that, receiving it into pasture for forage, and he thought that was a great idea. He did then suggest perhaps extending this concrete area a little bit, just to size this for his needs. So our next steps here are to talk to an engineer to see what exact size area would be appropriate for this project. So that gives you an idea of how I use this map for a site visit to look at all kinds of things, the funding available, the potential BNPs, whether there's a stream there. I guess I can also mention like what it means to this stream and looking at what BNPs might be necessary here. A lot of the aerial imagery that we're using is nice because it shows a time of year where cover crops would exist in the fall. I'm not sure exactly what month they were taken, but this farm is already cover cropping to some extent, and it looks like contour farming, which are both good practices that I like to see and like to compliment a farmer for what they're already doing well, and then talk about opportunities to maybe diversify their cover crop if they haven't already. So that's not something I could really tell from a map. So that was a lot of information, but hopefully that was more helpful than me just theorizing about maps. Actually show you what it looks like. So we can open it up for discussion now if you have questions about what we just talked about. And if you have ideas for what you would want to use a map for, we can see if this map can answer those questions or what additional data would need to be added to the map. So lots of food for thought. Yes.
The aerial imagery and the CIC land use layer, is that open data? Is it free? Is that something you had purchased from someone?
Nope, that's all free. So on this presentation, the link for the website with the land use land cover data is available. It's all available for download in county or Baywide. So the Chesapeake Conservancy website has that. If you need to help finding it, just contact me. My contact information is here and I'll be happy to help you out.
Is it more specific than the National Land Cover Database from the USGS?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was a reason why one would be chosen.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I guess my question is about the nexus of this package of information or tools with some of the other expected reporting or requirements associated with working on farms. So it's my understanding that when you receive money from certain agencies like NRCS, you may be required to produce a farm plan of some kind, and that may need to have documentation, et cetera. And it seems to me as though a lot of what you presented could really be helpful in that regard to a farmer. And I'm just wondering if that's part of your plan here, is that you would also provide a service to those farms that also want to then go and secure funding to do some of these BMPs on the property. No, that's kind of a big question.
I think you might be referring to, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just the required plans associated with NRCS funding. Yeah, so the Alliance doesn't write those plans to provide that technical service. We partner with other organizations that do, or conservation districts can sometimes, although for NRCS programs. So we oftentimes contract with private companies that would provide those plans, and they have their own mapping systems. So I'm not sure if this map would be helpful to them or if they already have their own system. But that, yeah, really your question now makes me have a question for them. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you.
Okay.
Yes.
Great overview. What would sort of getting a GIS degree myself? What's a good next step? Is there a good training program for you using ArcGIS and these kind of maps that y'all might recommend?
Yeah, I mean, Esri has a ton of tutorials online.
I'm sorry, Esri.
Esri, sorry. I actually don't know off the top of my head what that stands for.
ESRI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me neither. It's the company that produces ArcGIS.
Yeah, so if you go to Arc Online, just Google that. Tons of tutorial videos that can help you. The reference pages are great. And then YouTube videos, obviously, there's tons of those out there for people walking through different types of maps, anything like that. You're more than welcome to reach out to us. We can give you a hand, getting started with it.
Just to follow up, I know there's some colleges and universities that do offer certificates. So that could be something, if your job covers that, you could look into your area to see if there's a GIS certificate.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's another great resource. I know somebody had just gone through sort of an accelerator. It was a couple of weeks. They had a certificate for GIS, so that's definitely an option. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, what's the timeline like for creating a tool? Like, how long does it take to start to finish?
Yeah, good question. I think for the piece that I contributed to in just collecting the reference layers, a couple of months. And since the map does not cover all of the Alliance's geography, it continues to be ongoing that we add information to it. And then for the prioritization. Yeah, the prioritization methodology, we adapted from prioritizations we have done before. That took a couple of weeks just to make sure everything, quality checking all of that data and all of those 7,581 parcels takes a little bit of time. So yeah, a couple of weeks for that, and then just creating the tool itself, making sure everything's running, making sure the access is okay. Took maybe a month or so once we were completed. Yeah, go ahead.
So, just on the subject of prioritization, it looks to me like from what you produce, well, let me back up and say that reaching out to private landowners takes time, building relationships, et cetera. So, having gone through this exercise, it sounds like, Vander, you are now using the maps to prioritize your outreach to private landowners, and I'd be curious how that's working.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that question. A lot of our priorities still fall from the landowners that are brought to us by our corporate partners. So because this map was developed with the alliances and the CIC's understanding of conservation opportunities, that is the value we bring to the partnership. But unfortunately or not unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the farms that we visit do tend to be the ones that show interest to the co-op staff. So mainly the prioritization layer helps us to understand the landscape context of the farm that we are going to visit, and then be able to identify patterns in groups of farms where they are, and be able to apply for funding for them depending on that prioritization. There might be opportunity to do it the other way in the future, but it would take more engagement with our corporate partners at this point to educate them on this map and the prioritization methodology.
I was just going to add,
yes.
In my on countywide basis, we've used this to focus in on watersheds and areas. You're right. We're looking at what the lines is put on a micro level, looking at a farm, back that out and look at the macro level. In Lancaster, we have over 5,000 farms. You drive around a long time trying to figure out which one's going to stop at. This really helps go in. So we did a sort of watershed catchment base, and we were able to sort of bring in the various levels. Ryan and the concerns are extremely helpful in bringing it in. Here's a set of catchments, bringing it a little narrower. I think we got it down to 9 catchment. That with the emerge is really the top layer, and there's another 20 some behind that. So if you use it as a macro tool, it can really help on a broader side as well. Just whichever way you want to use it. Very, very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. We have a resources slide in this presentation, and one of the links is to the collaborative watershed mapping tool that is managed and used by the Lancaster Clean Water Partners. This one is open access, so.
Yeah, this is a really great tool, you know, for a geography where there's so much overlapping geography, that there's a place people can come as sort of a hub and download all of this data, use all this data. We have contribution from partners within the conservation field contributing data into this. So it's a really great tool to address some of those bigger picture issues that John was talking about. Thanks, John. Yeah, so.
Do you want to do
yeah. A couple of resources, since we're sort of on that topic. Platforms for mapping. For the majority of this, we use ArcGIS. I will find out what Esri means. We used ArcPro for the analysis and Arc Online for the tool making. Some additional resources: Esri's base map aerial. Sometimes the resolution's not great, or you need some more. Google Earth is obviously a really great option for that. We mentioned the Lancaster Clean Water Partners collaborative mapping tool. The environmental adjuster EJ screen tool. I believe there's a class seminar tomorrow on it. But this is a really great tool for socioeconomic or environmental justice data. It's used in a ton of grant applications, so it's a really important tool to refine any of that. And the link is here if you need it.
And then some of the data sources that we use for the reference layers for the alliances map, POSDA, which is a Pennsylvania repository of spatial data. I did link in here a Virginia prioritization map, which I'm excited to look into more. One of my newer colleagues recommended adding this to our map. So if you're based out of Virginia, that might be a good resource. This under resource communities layer, this is one that is on the Alliance map. It's also, there's a version of it filtered to a particular grant geography as well. So sometimes putting layers together can help save time. And then lastly here, the ArcGIS REST directory is a great resource for publicly accessible data. I linked in they're all services, and then they have folders for the Susquehanna, Chesapeake, and Potomac, other things as well that might be relevant to you. Last and very importantly, sometimes organizations don't have capacity to make maps themselves, which was the case for us. So partnering with another organization like the Chesapeake Innovation Center was a really great decision on our part, and really glad that we're able to have this map and be able to share it with you today. So thank you all for coming. If you have other questions, you can find us afterward. Really appreciate all the engagement today as well.
We'll give Ryan and Alexandra. Please fill out the evals I just handed out. If you do, please come see me. I'm going to give you raffle tickets. I'm going to give you both halves. This is for you to put in the raffle basket tomorrow night. So you have to be in person to win the raffle. You need one?
I do.
If anyone else needs one, let me know.
Thank you.
Environmental System Research Institute.
I was going to close it, I guess.